Hi, I'm Buddy Meyers, and we're out here at our dairy farm today to talk about alfalfa production. We've got some things going on here. We've used Conklin products now for the last 7 years in our alfalfa production. We're seeing excellent results, and we'd like to share some of the things we're doing with you here today. This is Roger Shad from Beverly High. He's used the AgroVantage Program on his alfalfa. This is Jerry Barstow from Zanesville here, the Zanesville area, and Jerry has a farm and he also does foliar feeding for other farmers. So we've got a lot of information we'd like to share with you here today. Talk about this field of alfalfa. This field was seeded down May the 5th of this year. We took our first cutting off in June. We took our second cutting around the 1st of August. I think it's the first week of August. We're standing in the third cutting. We don't have a tape measure with us here today, but I'm guessing it's probably 18-20 inches tall. So we're going to take 3 cuttings the year that was seeded, and this is common with the AgroVantage, Conklin AgroVantage program. Roger, what did you see down at your farm the first year? I'd like for you to tell about what you had the year prior to using Conklin, and then what happened the year that you started using the Conklin program.
Okay, a couple years ago I was trying to raise alfalfa and on the conventional program and couldn't quite get the job done. And I was at that time just started to be a Conklin distributor, and I come up to visit Bud about something, and he said, I want to show you my alfalfa. So we come over and looked at Bud's alfalfa, and I just shook my head. I said, Bud, there'll be a law against raising alfalfa like that. And he said, well, you can raise alfalfa like that. And I said, Bud, I've tried everything in the book so far and haven't had no success. So what we did then, he says, do what I asked you, and then we'll see what we can come up with. So the first thing we did was a soil sample. And this was in the summer, and I had about 70 acres I wanted to sow down. So we took a soil sample on several different fields. And we're in the hill ground, as you can see we are here. And we took the soil sample and then did a prescription according to each field. And the interesting thing of it is I had one field, the pH was a 5.5. And it called for a few ton of lime, so we put 2 ton of lime on that field that fall. But we was also able, after we took a soil sample and got started into it, we up and sowed the alfalfa on the 28th day of July of that summer. And we had a nice rain after that, the next couple of days, and that stuff popped up. And to make a long story short, we cut a cutting off that alfalfa about the 18th day of September. And that stuff was about 30-some inches tall, and I'm just a little over 5.5 feet, so it was well up. So we did take a cutting off that first fall, and I think that's kind of unusual in alfalfa production, planting it in the summertime, taking a crop off of it. The next spring, we continued to foliage feed, and we'll talk about each product as we get into here. But the next year, I took 5 cuttings off that alfalfa. We went in there and foliage fed it in the spring, about the first part of April. Every time we took a cutting off, we'd foliage feed it 5 to 10 days later. And we were taking cuttings off of that, depends on the weather and the moisture. The quickest we ever did was 25 days later, we took another cutting. And we took 5 cuttings off that alfalfa that year. And I was totally impressed. And the alfalfa looked very similar to this right here. It just really responded. And if a guy is really serious about raising forages and alfalfa particularly, and he wants to increase his yield, I'm talking about at least 30%, you better take a look at what Conklin has to offer. And this is what we're doing today, is showing different farmers how they can, we're sharing with them on how they can do this also. And the dry program unfortunately can't hold a stick to what we're doing.
Thank you, Roger. And you know, it's one thing that I forgot to mention, and Roger forgot to mention, is I told Roger that he could raise as good alfalfa as what we do. I neglected to tell him he could raise better alfalfa than what we are here, and he did. Those fields he's talking about taking 5 cuttings off, the one field in particular, he had an alfalfa seeding failure the year before. So Roger went in there and foliar fed when it broke dormancy in the spring, which we weren't accustomed to doing here because our ground tends to stay a little wet. So we don't like to go on in the spring. We should. We're definitely going to do that when we can. When that alfalfa breaks dormancy, get in there and foliar feed it. And Roger had done that, and his alfalfa was about 10 days ahead of ours. So I neglected to tell Roger that he could raise alfalfa better than what we are, and he's doing it. I'd like for Jerry Barstow to talk about his experience now with the products on his own farm, as well as what he's seeing with fellows that he's custom applying these products for.
Thank you, Bud. We just got started here in the foil feeding probably, I believe it was last spring really, and it's really wonderful. You can you go out here with your outfit and you go to the farm and we put in all the micronutrients and everything it needs, and you go out here and you just pull into the field and set your rate for what you want, and when you're done, the fertilizer is where it needs to be, and you know it usually comes out right to the T. I never tried it, of course, foil feeding till last year, and I'm real tickled with it. We've grown pretty nice alfalfa. I've got some old seedings that probably 5 years old maybe, but it really responded, and it's going to go another 2 years maybe yet before I'd have to rotate the crop. But it's really exciting to be with the Conklin company, and they keep doing things more for the farmers. They keep updating on maybe a different fertilizer or something, and they really do a lot for the farmer, and I'm real pleased with that. I do foil feed here for Buddy, which you can see, it's an exceptional field. It looks pretty. There's a lot of alfalfa in here, and this field here I was around when he sowed it and everything, and it's just wonderful to see, and the stuff will work. We can stand here all day, but it really works. They've got and the more you foil feed, the better it seems to work. You can come in here on a farm that's never used it before, and well, we really didn't see a result. But if you can get them the second time, the same year, you can really see a world of difference. I've got some third cutting hay. Of course, it had a lot to do with Mother Nature. It's going to be a lot better third cutting, I believe, than it was second cutting. And that's about it, Bud, I believe. And back to you.
Okay. Thanks, Jerry. And Jerry mentioned some things there we sometimes don't think about. That's ease of application. We don't have to go to town and pick up the dry fertilizer cart and wonder if it's going to be ready when we get there, and wonder if it's going to work when we bring it home. Wonder if we're getting the right kind of a job spreading that dry fertilizer out here. You have some fellows that'll maybe overlap attempting to get a good job. Well, when you got particle sizes the same size at different weights, it's pretty hard to get an even job. You can't take a ping pong ball and a golf ball and throw them both with the same effort and they both land in the same place. It won't happen. So with foliar feeding, you're directing your nutrients directly on the crown of the alfalfa, and this is a supplement to whatever your other fertilizer program may be. We may recommend some dry fertilizer to get your soil in balance. Over the years, us farmers have been brainwashed into thinking that we have to use optimum tons of materials to get optimum yields, and that's just not necessarily true. In fact, we can get optimum yields with a few gallons of the right kind of nutrients per acre. So if you're looking for top forage production, the Conklin is the only company in the United States that has a total program. We are the only fertilizer company in the United States that is owned by farmers. Then those farmers have alfalfa test plots on their farm. So we got the grassroots research here to back these products up, and the knowledge to tell farmers how to use these products to get optimum yields. Here is a typical alfalfa plant here out of this cutting. Look at the size of those leaves, and look at your leaves go clear down, almost clear to the root. And there's 37% protein in the leaves and 9% protein in the stalk. So what do we want? We want more leaves. And this comes with the AgroVantage program. And we'll start to talk about that here in a little bit, why we can raise alfalfa like this. And in the past, I was using as much as 800 pounds of dry fertilizer per acre, attempting to get 8 ton of fertilizer, or 8 ton of alfalfa per acre. We broke the 10 ton per acre using the AgroVantage program, quit using the salt-based fertilizers. We're getting our soil back in balance now, and our soil is getting in harmony with nature, and that's what this program's all about, is balancing your soil and getting optimum yields with the least amount of input cost. That's so important in today's environment, because we might as well face it. Whether it's beef, dairy, pork, whatever, commodities, farmers are really never going to get the price we deserve. So we have to look at everything that's available to us to cut our costs and become more efficient. I just wonder how efficient we have to become to continue to be competitive and still protect the environment. And this is something else that we need to be concerned about too. These products will help us to protect the environment instead of putting on hundreds and hundreds of pounds to the acre, which may wash off with some soil and get into the river. We're putting a few gallons per acre and feeding a plant. We talk about feeding a plant instead of feeding the soil. So Roger, I'd like for you to tell about, if we was getting ready to seed this field, what would be the products you'd reach for?
Well, if we was getting ready to seed this field, Bud, the first product I'd reach for is Amplified D. Amplified D is a seed germination aid, and what it has in it is a product called Denison monophosphate. Now that's the same product that is in the seed. It's a little germ. It gives it energy to get up out of the ground. And when we plant ours in our area, we plant usually 18 to 20 pounds of seed to the acre. Well, if every seed in alfalfa would come up, 6 pounds the acre is all you'd really need to get a good stand. Well, Bud said we can cut our rate back by 4 to 6 pounds. Well, we cut her back to 14 pounds to the acre. And I was very nervous at that time about doing it. And I said, boy, if I do all this work and not get a good stand, Bud, I'm coming after you. Well, we had a beautiful stand. But it cost me less than $3 or $4 an acre to use this product, and I saved 6 pounds of seed at $4 a pound. Now, I was the end user, so therefore, I saved about 20 bucks an acre just in seeding my alfalfa. Plus, I don't think 40 pounds of seed the acre could have done much better than what we did. Excellent product. But Amplified D, to me, is a must to get started on that seed.
Yes. Thanks, Roger. I sure agree with Roger. What we've found with several farmers in this area is we're able to advise them to cut their seeding rate from 18 to 20 pounds an acre down to 12 or 14 and have a beautiful stand. You know, after this stand's 2 or 3 years old, we have taken a lot of stand counts, and we've still got 19 to 24 crowns per square foot. And that's just about all that will survive. It's a matter of survival of the fittest as this stand grows older, and that will still give you excellent yields. So right off the bat, we're starting to save money using the AgroVantage program, and then we're on our way to the optimum yields and trying to get the yield that these new alfalfa varieties are capable of. We can't use 19th century technology fertilizer and expect to get 21st century yields. It just can't be done. And Conklin has always been ahead of the game, whichever products or whichever division you might talk about. In the agronomics division, there's no secrets. It's not magical. There's a lot of research data out there from universities for many, many years to back this up. And we're the only company that's putting it all together and offering it to the farmer. I don't care if the farmer's only got 2 acres of alfalfa or 2,000 acres. Our fertilizer comes in small quantities or by the truckload, so we can handle whatever the farmer needs. So Roger talked about the Amplified D and getting the seed in the ground and getting it started. And then there's other things that can be done depending upon the situation, depending upon the soil test. The farmer may want to use some liquid fertilizer when he plants. Roger, let's talk about the fertilizer and maybe calcium. In that field of yours that had a pH of 5.5, it needed calcium.
Yes, Bud, and when we planted it, we had a cross drill, kind of a no-till drill, because we did some no-till and we did some conventional all on the same day. And well, we started out with about 3 gallons of our liquid product called 31818. It's a clear liquid, as you can see here. This product won't freeze. You can set all winter and set 2 or 3 years. It won't separate. Then that way the plant gets everything it needs right there. But we was able to put on 2 or 3 gallons of this to the acre. And on the one field that had a 5.5 pH, we put a product on called our calcium, another liquid micro. And we put that on to a rate of roughly a quart to the acre, because we were down on our calcium. And then we also used another product with that called Excito, on the soil Excito. We wanted to get that crop up out of the ground and get it going good. And we definitely did that. In a few days, this crop was up and rolling.
Thanks, Roger. And Roger also used another product we don't talk a lot about. It's a product that's been around for many, many years. It's one of the first products that Conklin came on the market with, and it's Wex. And Wex has many uses, but in alfalfa production there, Roger used this on some of these fields that tend to be tight. And this tends to condition the soil, and it has soil amendment properties. And so therefore that just helped on those fields that were maybe a little slower. It helped to get them going quicker. So there's a product there that could work in your program if needed. And then once we got the alfalfa up then we want to foliar feed it, and that's where Jerry comes in. Jerry will probably pick 9-18-9 or 3-18-18. If the alfalfa looks like it needs it, you know, the alfalfa doesn't start to build rhizomes right away. It's capable of furnishing its own nitrogen, but it doesn't do it right away. So it might need a kick with a little bit of foliar nitrogen. That's our foliar product, 2600. And he'll probably reach for some zinc. Zinc is a healer. When this is sprayed on alfalfa, zinc acts on alfalfa like zinc does in our bodies. It's a healer. It helps the plant to be healthy. So he'll probably reach for zinc. Probably reach for calcium. Alfalfa needs a lot of calcium. So this is a major secondary element. Again, a clear liquid that can be foliar applied that's readily acceptable by the plant. All these products have a pH of 7, so the plant will readily accept the product. And the last thing you'll reach for, if everything else is in balance, and this is why we want a soil test, so that everything is in balance, and the last product you reach for then is called foliar Excito. Excito carries an EPA registration. It's a plant growth regulator. There's dozens of them on the market. Conklin has the only product that carries an EPA registration. In other words, Conklin spent the money and the time and the effort to prove to the EPA this does increase yields. And it certainly does that. If you're looking for top alfalfa production, there's nothing that can compare with Excito, with this total program. So Jerry, let's talk a little bit about, let's say we've sowed this down. It's coming up, it's about 1.5 inches, 2 inches tall. What happens then?
Well, Bud, there's a few things here you forgot to mention there for the foil feeding, and that is the boron, which we need to put that on for when the foil feeding for the crown of the alfalfa. It definitely needs that. And then we've got a product here, a new product out called Rain Fast, and it's a product you put right in there with it. I believe it's 8 ounces to the
200 gallons.
200 gallons, and that is and it just says it on there, Rain Fast. When it goes on your alfalfa, that's where you want it to be, and that's where it's going to go with this Rain Fast. It really does exceptional.
Helps to get that fertilizer into the crown.
That's what I'm trying to say,
yes.
Bud, I guess. And it's just, and then another thing I wanted to mention, when we talk about our marketing nutrients, we're not talking about a bunch. Usually a pint of calcium, boron, and zinc. I mean, it's not to the acre. Now that's not a whole lot, and of course not very expensive at all neither. And Bud, I don't know if I missed anything yet.
No, I think Jerry, you picked up on the things I missed there.
Okay.
That's very important, especially the Rain Fast material. What this does is, like I said, helps to get your fertilizer into the crown quicker. If there's a storm coming in, it'll be rain fast in 30 minutes. So that's very important. So
But one thing we didn't talk about a whole lot here was the cost. That's always a big issue on it. You know, if you stop and think about it, it'll cost you roughly $15 to $20 an acre to do a foliage fit. Well, that sounds like a lot maybe, but if you do that 4 or 5 times a year, that also sounds like a lot, even up to $20 an acre. But if you're getting 10 ton of alfalfa off your ground, and if alfalfa is, I know it's bringing over $100 a ton,
yes.
So that's less than $10 a ton for your cost. Now, I don't know where you can buy good alfalfa hay for $10 a ton.
That's right. That's total needs. It can be as high as $30 per acre, but we're looking at 6 to 10 tons the acre. Where before with the dry program, we was having a hard time getting 6. It's not hard at all to get 6 tons the acre. We'll do that in 2 cuttings. So we're maximizing the acreage that we have, And that's going to be so important in the future too, as the urban sprawl keeps coming in on us. Us fellows that rent farms will be renting less farms because now they're growing houses. So we have to make our acres worth more. And that's what this program's all about. So now we've got the crop planted, we're foliar fed, and it's on its way. So then the next step is to cut it, and this can happen in a seeding year about 6 weeks after you've seeded. We cut it, and then we preserve the protein that we've raised. There's no need to raise leaves like this in protein if we don't preserve it. Algonquin has a product called Feed Store. Our older products are called ProServe. ProServe can be used when you mow. If you're going to bale your hay and want it to get really dry quick, then you want to use ProServe and the new technology wetting agent called RainFast. That will help to break the wax on the stems, help your hay to dry quicker. So then if you want to bale, you'd want to use the ProServe and the RainFast when you mow. Now in our situation where it's all going in the silos, we don't really need for it to dry that quickly, so we don't use ProServe when we mow. But we do use Feed Store at the blower to preserve retain the nutrients that we've grown. And then we take it a step further in our dairy herd then, and hundreds of dairymen across the country are doing this. They're taking it a step further and releasing that protein in the cow's rumen with a product that we have called Fast Track, which is really, I like to feel it's in our animal products division, but it's really part of our forage division too, because it helps that animal to release the proteins that's bound up in the forages. And we can talk about that on maybe another video at another time. So we've taken our first cutting off, and then we have Jerry come right back in. About 7 days after you've cut, we've found seems to work best. And there you'll see some shoots coming back up. And you know, when we cut alfalfa and run over it with this big equipment, we're really doing our best to kill it, aren't we?
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do, seems like.
Yep, we're mashing it down. And if you stop and think about it, if you're going out through there with the mower, you got a certain set of tracks. Field starts at the same place each time. It starts at the edge and you work across. And when you rake, what do? Your tracks are the same place as the mower tracks. Even if you're putting a couple windrows together, guess where your chopper ends up? Right in the same tracks. So when you see your alfalfa stand start to come back, you'll see maybe shoots inch and a half tall between the tracks. Now where the tracks are, they'll be kind of bare, and you think, boy. Yeah, and it took this hard-headed German a long time to realize that you don't need foliage there to feed alfalfa. Now, if we're feeding soybeans, it'd be a different story. But for alfalfa, you want to feed that crown. And it's like a transfusion. You're giving that plant instant energy. So where those tracks are, like I said, we're trying to kill it. So then with the liquid fertilizer, the clear liquid fertilizer, it has a neutral pH, and so does our micronutrients. And our micronutrients are all chelated except calcium. Calcium cannot, or except boron. Boron cannot be chelated. But the products that we have that are chelated with a product called EDTA, and that encapsulates the micronutrient so that it's available only to the plant. If it hits the soil, it's not available to the soil, it's available to the plant. That's why we can get by with a half a pint or a pint of a micronutrient. So we use zinc, because again, as I mentioned before, zinc is a healer. So we want to heal that crown. We want to get it on the way to making another crop like this. So that is the key to top forage production, is foliar feeding. So then we go on, we're ready to make our subsequent cuttings, and basically done the same way. When you take your last cutting off for the year, do not use Excito, because then we're wanting to build root reserves. We're not looking for top growth. So do not use Excito on the last cutting of the season. And you're when you foliar feed the last time, you're kind of putting it to bed for winter. Wouldn't hurt to bump that calcium up a little bit. Wouldn't hurt to bump the boron up a little bit. Look at your soil test and see what your soil levels are. And then you'll know, and ask your field manager, your Conklin manager, to look at your soil tests with you, because those fellows are trained, they've been to ag training, and they can advise you what's best for your field, your particular field, and no matter how many fields you have, for your farm.
Well, Bud, I sure appreciate today coming up here and sharing your alfalfa with a lot of other guys that don't have the opportunity to come all the way up here to see it. But I tell you, it sure is phenomenal to look at alfalfa and the forage that you're growing here for your cattle. If them cows don't like this, well then I really feel sorry for them. But I'm really impressed with the amount of alfalfa we got here and the quality of alfalfa we've got for your livestock. And livestock producers all across the country, I don't care whether it's dairy cattle or beef cattle, they deserve a good meal. And this is one way to do it, very economical. Thank you again today, Bud, for having me up and sharing this with us.
You're quite welcome, Roger.
Well, same way as me, Bud. I appreciate it. It's nice to come out and see after we spoil fed it and see how it has responded. And as you can see, it's exceptional. It's really nice, and I guess I can't say enough about it. But it's a good way to grow alfalfa, and we can do so much with it when we've got a foil feed. We've like I said, we talked about some micronutrients. Soil test is a must, and Midwest Labs do that for us. And it's just I don't know what else to say, but we're putting gallons to the acre of maybe 5 gallons to the acre. Now that's a real something. I mean, instead of hundreds of pounds, it's 5 gallons, and it will work. I mean, you can see it. This is some awful nice dirt cutting, especially being a new seeding this spring. I think it's real nice. And everywhere I go now, it's just not here on the Meyers farm. I do a lot for Rittenberger's farm here in Zanesville, and he can grow the same alfalfa. He's new seedings and old seedings, and it's really something to see. We do different jobs, different times, and you can come back in 2 or 3 weeks and see what you sprayed before, and it's really something. And there you go again, Bud. It's a way to do it. You're putting what you need in the plant to get it to grow. Bud, I thank you again.
Thank you, Jerry, and thank you, Roger. You know, fellas, there's one very important thing we forgot, and maybe that's because it's so new. Conklin has a new product this year called Sidekick, and we are seeing excellent results with that product. In fact, this alfalfa here was foliar fed with 4 gallons of 3-18-18, the micronutrients, and also 2 quarts of Sidekick. Sidekick is 25% potassium, 17% sulfur. Of all the soil tests from across the country that go into Midwest laboratories in Omaha, Nebraska, 80% of those soil tests are deficient in sulfur. And prior to our product, I don't have knowledge of any material that was convenient to use. Sure, there's dry sulfur. You can throw it out there, and about 2% of it's available the year you put it on, and then 2 or 3% each year after that. So it's an element of sulfur, and you don't get the results like you can get if you can feed the sulfur to the plant. And we feel that has a lot to do with the quality of this hay. The leaves, you can see the leaves go clear to the ground, and that's because this soil is starting to get imbalanced. And we'll look at the soil test off this field here in a little bit. And I think there's something I want to point out there when we do look at that soil test. So fellas, Roger, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, not at this moment, Bud. Thank you.
Jerry?
No, I don't believe so, Bud. I think we pretty much got it covered, I believe.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for taking time to watch this video. We are farmers trying to help farmers. We know we have a total program. We are the only company, Conklin is the only company in the United States that has a total program for forage production, and we're here to tell you about it. I think you'll see some things here that will interest you. If you're interested in raising alfalfa, you're welcome to come and look at our alfalfa. If you can't see a difference in what we're doing, then chances are you're not looking close enough, because the difference is very obvious. Thank you. Here at the house, there's some things that we forgot to mention over in the field about foliar feeding. There's several things that's very important that needs to be done when you're foliar feeding alfalfa. If these 3 things can't be done, then you probably better not foliar feed alfalfa. Jerry, what are those?
Okay, Bud, the most important is is the temperature of the day. You want it to drop at least 10 degrees, or try to have it around 70 degrees if possible. And 60-pound pressure with your tips on and your tips pointing straight back, not down, but straight back. That's the way we try to. That's the way we do a furrow feeding or alfalfa.
All right.
All right, bud.
Yes, sir, Jerry. And a lot of people say, well, how come you want your tips headed back? And why do you want 60-pound pressure? When that fertilizer comes out of your tips, it'll come out and we use a hollow cone tip. We want it to swirl and then just come down like a blanket on the crop. We don't want to force it on the crop. We want to just lay it down like a blanket so the crop can accept it. Okay, a lot of folks ask, well, can we full your feed in the morning? We really don't want to stay up till 8:30, 9 o'clock at night and be out there full your feeding alfalfa. No, well, it can be done in the morning. We don't recommend it. You probably won't see results. Time of the day is very important. It needs to be done in the evening, because then when the barometric pressure goes down, your temperature drops, that the plant cells open up, they're ready to accept something. They're either going to accept fertilizer or going to accept the dew. So if you try to full your feed in the morning, that plant's already taken in all the moisture it can take in overnight with the dew. So you want your fertilizer in there first. And that's another reason to use the rain fast. So we completely flood that plant with nutrients before the dew sets on. That's so important. Okay, over in the field we talked about the Midwest laboratories and their recommendations. So we have here the soil test that was taken this year for that field before it was planted. As you can see, it's an AgroVantage recommendation from Midwest Laboratories, an independent laboratory. So we start here with our phosphorus. P1 is 54, P2 is 74, potassium is 221, magnesium is 271, sulfur is 12. Sulfur is low. We'd like to see sulfur at with our magnesium and potassium, phosphorus where they're at. We'd like to see sulfur at about 30. So that's why we're looking at this new product, Sidekick, for this field. Zinc is 4, that is good. Manganese is good. Iron's always high in Ohio soils. Copper is 1, that's about where we want it. Boron is 0.6, we're a little low. Actually, copper is just a little low. We'd like to see it probably 1.5. So you can just write down a list here and see exactly what that field needs. And then we write a prescription for that field so that you can get the full potential out of that field and the full genetic potential of whatever hybrid alfalfa you may be planting. Okay, fellas, we've heard for years that a pound is a pound the world around. When it comes to fertilizer, that's not necessarily true. As we're trying to show you here today, there is a difference in fertilizers. There's a lot of liquid fertilizers out there. Some of them are good, some of them aren't so good, some of them are superior. We have one of the superior products on the market today. So when you full your feed your alfalfa, and maybe some of you fellas have tried to full your feed before and say, gosh, I didn't see results. Well, that's probably because you didn't have a total program. That's what we're here to offer you, is a total program. So Roger, in the past you used to use the dry products, and then you started using the clear. What would you have to say here to wrap up this film?
Well, the biggest thing I can see is, like you say, when you're talking about a dry fertilizer, it's not all equal. And when you spread it out there on the ground, you may get some here and some there. You may not get it uniform. With the liquid product and the superior product that Conklin has in our feast fertilizer, each plant, each stalk gets what it needs, and that is critical. If you're feeding each plant different, you're going to get different results. But if you want uniform results, then use clearly the leader. Conklin is by far, I always said, it's been about 10 years ahead of the competition. This is 21st century technology. And fellas, if we're going to stay in the business today and raising good forages, we have to use a product that'll get the job done. This one was good at one time, but times have changed. I mean, you guys aren't all farmed today with the old B John Deeres or the M Farm All tractors. You got the newer models, and that's what this is, the new model.
Thanks, Roger. And there's another thing we want to talk about too, and then we'll wrap this film up. Fellas, if the pH of your soil is anywhere from 4 to to 5.5, would you really think twice about maybe where you're going to put that field in alfalfa or not? I believe you would. You know what the pH of this is? Anywhere from 4 to 5.5. Do you really think you can do the proper job feeding your crop with a product that the pH is 4 to 5.5? Thank you.